All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Corona Geek, here where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host for today, Charles McKeever, and in the studio with us is Brian Burton. Brian Burton's a professor down in Abilene, and he teaches mobile app development using Corona SDK to a whole new generation of mobile app developers. Also joining us is Ed Marina. Ed is a developer of Corona, and also he has a whole new library of app templates for mobile app development. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a little while. And then, of course, joining us from across the pond is Ian Masters, developer of Finger Hula. So thanks, guys, for joining us.
Hi.
How's the weather where you are, everyone?
I would have to get up and look outside. It's raining here in Oregon.
Yeah, see, the joke there is none of us leave our computers, so we have no idea.
Indeed. I haven't seen it outside yet.
Well,
dark here.
It's what, dark? Is that the weather condition, dark? All right, well, let's get into some announcements today. At some point we're going to talk about app development workflow, and we'll get into all of that. But before we do that, let's talk about a few things that are going on. I'm not going to go through all the events that are happening this week, essentially just because the last week when we did those, they were happening as we were talking about them, so it didn't really make much sense. So what I'm going to do is encourage everybody to go out to coronalabs.com and click on the community link there, or actually if you just go to the homepage of the website, you'll see all the events that are listed. So it'll be anything that's happening from right now till scheduled out months in advance. So go check those out, because there are a lot of great events that are happening in your area, and those event organizers work hard, and they would love to have you out to their events. So go check that out. Also in the news is Brian, you were working on your next version of your book, and is that correct?
Yes, it's getting closer and closer. I'm hoping to have an early release available sometime in early March. Excellent. So it's once I get over 50% finished, which I'm very close, I'm just not quite there yet, I'll make it available as an early release. This is focused on the non-programmer, or the person who has not programmed in an extended period of time, who wants to start developing their own mobile apps. And it introduces the Lua programming language and how to do programming in hopefully a very gentle, easy to follow method that will be friendly for anybody who wants to jump into it.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been reading the copy that you sent me over the weekend, and I like it. I like the way that it's laid out, and I think that you're doing a good service to the people who are trying to get into programming but don't necessarily have a programming background. So good kudos on that. So,
thank you.
Yeah, let us know when that comes out, because I definitely want to promote the advanced copy. That's the way I bought your first book, and it really worked out for me. I liked getting it, and then getting the updated version when it came out. I think that's the way the books should be published these days.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that more and more commonly with technical books. I'm personally have gone completely ebook on everything, unless it's an encyclopedia or something, and even then I still want to be able to search electronically. So I'm completely focused on the whole ebook trend, and we'll make the book available as a PDF or EPUB or Mobi format for anybody who wants to read on the different types of readers.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. Yeah, it seems like things move so quickly that just printing it would be crazy.
Printing it's just a waste of paper at this time. I'm actually having to update the previous book about once every 1 to 2 months. So, it's constantly a new version of that coming out. Print would just simply be a complete waste of time in my mind.
You're right. Yeah. Have you ever thought about going with iBooks?
I am actually working on an iBook version of it.
Okay.
So expect to see that come out eventually, but between teaching classes and writing, I just simply haven't had the time to get that quite finished. Probably happen over the summer.
Yeah, I hear you. I just wondered people's feedback on iBook, and whether they like publishing to it or not, or whether they feel like they get their their value out of it for the time invested.
Right. As soon as I do it, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I know my wife has she's published a couple of cookbooks using it, and she's got a fairly large blog following, and that's worked out well for her. She hasn't taken me to Hawaii yet, but but it's consistent.
She needs to get on that.
Yeah, exactly. It's consistent though in sales, so that's cool. So another great resource out there that people may not be aware of is Corona Paper, and issue number 2 is available right now. It's out there for sale, and issue 3 is getting ready to come up here shortly in March. But I don't if you didn't catch issue 1, there's a great 20-minute game code sample that I'm basically going to be going through and creating a series of videos for, and that we'll have that out soon. It was a great little. I actually downloaded the magazine on the way out to California, read through the whole thing, loved it, consumed every stitch of it, and have been wanted to do this 20-minute code sample for a while. And I emailed the guys over at Ten Fingers and said, "Hey, I want to be able to do this, so give me permission to do it." So I'm working on that, and as soon as I have that, I'm going to create this series. Basically, the game is fairly straightforward, about 200 lines of code, and a really good sample of what you can do with Corona. So, and also in issue 2, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's an interview there with David Rulin, who is in is it Sweden, Switzerland, somewhere over there, and he participated in the Global Game Jam in France, and he's a Corona ambassador, and it's a really good write-up about David and what he's doing over there. So if you get an opportunity, go pick up issue number 2, check it out. It's a great resource. They do a print publication as well, but I really like the digital version just because I can download it as a PDF. I can put it on any of my devices and take it with me wherever I go. So, all right.
Don't forget to do a contest too.
Yeah, do you have the details on that? Because I don't.
The 1K contest, they did a 1K contest in the first issue, which was you had to write a game or an application with 1 kilobyte of code or less. And the prize was a MacBook Air, and we'll find out in issue 3 that I won that. I'm hoping. And the next one is for an iPad Mini, and that's I forget the details on that contest, but that was in issue 2.
Yeah, so that's I like that they do those contests. I'm not a contest entry kind of person, but yeah, those are cool. So hey, we got a couple people joining us. Thanks, Matthew, for joining us. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good. And hey, how's it going in Japan? Uh-oh, your microphone is muted. Tetsuo's joining us from Japan. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, 5 o'clock a.m.
Oh
my.
That's dedication. That's dedication for sure. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. So before the hangout started, we were talking about Samsung's coming out with a new not coming out with a new store. They have a store, and that it's another place for people to submit apps. So, Ian, did you have some feedback on that? Did you say you had submitted something to that, or what were you doing?
We have Fingerhooler on the Samsung App Store, along with the others that we're able to submit to. So I think that's 4 stores in total, 4 or 5.
Okay.
So we kind of launched at the end of last year in December, and it was kind of quite a tough time to launch an indie game, but it was important to get it out for a couple of competitions that we want to enter in. So we're about to start another push now. So hopefully we'll see that pick up soon.
Okay. Was it difficult to get listed in the store?
It took a little bit longer than some of the others for the approval, because they test it on quite a lot of devices, as opposed to someone like Amazon, which went through in probably about a day. But it was quite painless.
Okay. Do they ask you for a lot of data? I know some of these stores, when you submit, there's like this they want a lot of information.
I'd say it was one of the easier ones. It just took a bit of time for them to approve the app.
Okay, so
But
just
that's familiar if you've ever submitted an app to Apple.
right, okay, okay, and
Now,
so
Samsung's being very aggressive going after the developers. That what I read on Gamasutra was that they were really offering great incentives for the first 6 months. I believe it was 100% for the developer of it, and then after that 6 months, it'll shift to 80% for the developer. So, they and Microsoft and all of these and BlackBerry are being all very aggressive trying to get developers to come over to their platforms and to sell on their stores. So this is just another example of a great opportunity as an indie developer to take advantage of being able to make a little bit of extra change for your pocket.
Hey, Ian? Is it Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah. Question. When you submitted to the Samsung store, was it just using the Corona build for Android?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
We were briefly talking about the daily build, which I'm very happy with, because there's an audio issue in that which has been reverted back to the Google way of doing it. So that might have an impact on Samsung, but I'm sure they'll address that pretty quickly.
Have you had any issues with your Amazon builds?
No, I don't think
I
so.
only ask because I have a couple in the Android store. I'm sorry, the Amazon store, the Android store, and the Apple store, obviously. But I have one in the Amazon store that I built, Amazon Kindle. I posted this in the forum too. Rob Miracle's been kind of looking into this for a little bit, but it seemed like I did it because I wanted to get on the Kindle, obviously. But obviously, Android users that are using the Kindle or Amazon app can go in there and grab stuff off the Amazon store for their Android. But when you do a compile for the Amazon store and you say Amazon Kindle, it's specific to their code. There's some pieces in there they strip out that I guess Corona strips out, so it's made available only for Kindle. Problem is, I had a guy ironically running a Samsung phone that downloaded my app and ran it from the Amazon store, and it loads and it starts to run, but then any of the buttons he tries to push just kind of go nowhere. So it was just something I ran into, and I'm just wondering if anybody else has been kind of seeing that with their Amazon distributions.
We haven't had that. We built it for Amazon, and it is available on Kindle devices, and I've downloaded the Amazon app to my Android devices, and it's been available through that. We haven't really seen any problems with that.
Yeah, I think mine was more of an audio problem, so it's interesting you mentioned the daily build for the audio thing, but that was I was under the assumption that it would just run smoothly on any Android/Kindle, and from what I'm hearing, the reason why there is a separate compile altogether is that there's the version of Android that Kindle uses a little more streamlined to the open source version versus some of the hooks that Google Play puts in there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
just something I'm noticing, anyways.
Also, the early Kindle didn't have all the audio. All the like the microphone and all the other bits.
And it's weird because the app works fine on the Kindle. It was just somebody downloading the Kindle build of the app, if you will, on an Android device, a Samsung Galaxy phone, and then just calling me at 2:00 in the morning saying your shit doesn't work.
Nope, that's a bleep for later.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry about that. But it was, it works fine. So it worked. But I sent him a copy. Thankfully, since you can do this on an Android, I sent him a copy of the Android build, and he got happy.
Okay, good.
But
So something to note, definitely. Something to be
I'm
aware of.
running into.
Okay. Yeah, definitely something to be aware of. Okay, well, speaking of latest builds, in build
I'm
10...
going to self-bleep.
What's that?
I'm going to self-bleep now.
Oh, it's okay. On build 1031, basically the ability to specify GL linear and GL nearest was added to a list of features. So if you can do that via display.set default value, and a lot of people have been very excited about this. Some people have been very excited about it. Some people have been like, what? So the general idea here is that your images they're not fuzzy anymore. They're not fuzzy anymore, and so if you were using like a pixel art style game, your images wouldn't be fuzzy. And if you are wanting to scale things, then you don't need a whole bunch of additional assets, and they'll be able to do that. So those are really the two highlights, two benefits from that. But there's been a lot of discussion over it, and apparently a lot of people were pleased that it was added. So just thought we'd mention that. Regarding blog highlights, there's a good article out there Walter put out called "Console in Your Pocket." We've been kind of talking here lately about green throttle and using console controllers to be able to to go out there and use your mobile device as a console, and so basically Walter wrote about an article about that, talking about the different just this idea that you carry a console in your pocket. We really haven't necessarily thought of it that way because of the form factor and stuff, but it's really that's the case. So there's this whole transition period that's going on, kind of whether or not what consoles are going to be like in the future, what mobile is going to do to that market and everything, and so it's a good read. So you should definitely go check it out. It's on the blog right now. If you just go to coronalabs.com/blog, check it out. It's a good read. You guys, anybody who's got their green throttle controllers? Anybody? Ed, I know you were talking about you had yours, right?
Yeah, I had you there. Sorry, myself muted.
Yeah. So I've got one here as well. I've got a couple here as well, and I'm looking forward to putting together some apps with it. I think it's it's the wave of the future. I really think the one thing that I would like to see with any of these devices is that they actually work with the existing game console, because then I could buy one as a Xbox controller, and then it just be if nothing else, it could be an Xbox controller.
Is the current Xbox controller Bluetooth?
I don't know what it uses. I know that they have the wireless versions.
I'm assuming it's Bluetooth. That would be the typical connection method, but it could be something proprietary.
Yeah, it could be. That's a good question. I just think it really is at that point where it just needs to be. It's going to need to be supported, I think, but I could be wrong. So let's move on then to app development workflow. Let's talk about that. I think this is going to mean something different to each person, but a lot of people have wanted us to kind of talk about workflow and what tools you use, or where you should start, or how you should manage your projects, and so I thought we would bring this up on the panel here and let everybody kind of throw in on what they feel like is a good workflow. So to start, I'm going to assume that we're going to need a concept, and so you guys tell me what you think about the idea of creating a design document. How important is it to actually lay out your thoughts on paper, so to speak?
I always encourage my students to start with a design document.
Okay.
Anytime you're working with a team, a design document is essential so that you can communicate, share ideas, and develop how the project's going to work. Otherwise, it's stuck in the person who thought of it in their head, and it's not necessarily going to be effectively communicated to everybody else in the team. For an individual or a much smaller group of, say, 2 people working on it, the design document's still helpful to guide your development ideas, and so that you got something to refer back to after you've slept once or twice. But until you've got a larger team, it's essential for being able to communicate the development process.
Ed, what do you think about that?
I agree with what you said there. I'd like to add, though, is that with a smaller team, I work with some kids who locally who wanted to make some games for different platforms. Anyways, what I encouraged them to do was fill out sort of like a smaller design document where they would analyze their... Is my camera shaking? Sorry about that. They would analyze their game and just in 2 or 3 pages write out what they wanted to do. So they wouldn't write a really large design document. Because I agree that for a small team, you still need some kind of document, but you don't want to spend a lot of time because that can become a time sink in and of itself.
Right.
Brian,
I completely agree.
do you have any recommendations on format? Do you start your guys out with a blank sheet of paper, or do you give them a template?
I give them a short template that's just a list of headings for concepts that they do need to think about when they are creating their mobile app or game or whatever the project is that they're working on. Some of the headings are not appropriate, and I tell them just simply skip those. If you're not creating a multiplayer game, you obviously don't need to be worried about multiplayer concepts. If you're building an app and not a game, then graphics, sprites, and objects like sprites become much less important. So, when I say game design document, that's a very fluid concept. It's more of anything, just someplace, open up a Google Doc or some type of document that you can share amongst your group and be able to share the concepts that are what's happening.
Ian, I know when you developed Finger Hula, there's several people involved in that project. So how did you guys go about documenting that initial idea?
Well, it was prototyped by me in a weekend in Corona. So I'm not the main programmer at PlantPot. I'm more the design and the business side. Having said that, I did the art for Finger Hula. So I like to do a bit of everything. But sometimes you just have an idea and you need to figure out if it works before you can figure out if it's worth spending any more time on it. So I've actually done it for a couple of projects and actually just kind of taken a weekend and kind of proved to myself that we can build something that works and is fun to play. But we don't have offices either, so we're a distributed team. So Google Docs, I would reiterate, are a fantastic tool, especially because you can edit them at the same time. Multiple people can edit them and see everyone else's changes, and they've been invaluable to us over the last couple of years, and certainly we track bugs and we use them for as much stuff as possible, really.
Yeah, Google Docs are a fantastic tool. I can't emphasize. I plus one that I can't emphasize that enough. Matthew, what you?
I agree totally with what everyone said so far. I would say that the way I do most of my stuff, because some of it's we're doing our own thing, or we're working with a customer that needs something specific like a business app. I got tired of showing up in little coffee houses and then trying to draw things for people, and I'm not the best artist, so I actually took this stencil set that I found online, which was basically just the iPhone as a stencil. And then I created it to have its own little section on the side of wants and needs, right? So there were some things that were wanted for the app, and there were some things that were needed. And the wants and needs were priced differently, so, as you can probably imagine. But basically, I let the customer, if it's a customer need, it's basically we sit there and with the stencil and go through a quick drawing. I'll start with a pencil the first time to see where we're at and see what they want it to look like, and give them an idea what widgets work and what widgets don't, etc. And then once we kind of get down to the foundation of what it really looks like, I'll actually, hard pen it in there. Or I've actually taken this stencil now and made it as a PDF on my iPad. So I'll go with the iPad and say, okay, here's what this can do. There's been a few times where I've actually been sitting at like a bar or something, believe it or not, and coding at the bar, and somebody says, oh, you do apps? And I go, yeah. And they go, well, can you do something like this? And in just a few seconds in Corona, I'll throw a couple of widgets in there just to show what it looks like. And they go, okay, I'd like an app. And then it becomes a stencil conversation. But then you have to kind of, weigh really the understanding of how fast you can do it versus what you're really going to take to do it. I think that having the list on the column side, similar to what Brian was saying as far as a workflow, is good because it actually says, these are the things we're agreeing on before I send you the proposal. For my game, it's been mainly a bunch of stencils in an erotic state, and some whiteboarding with my kids, and I'll get one thing done and then I'll hand it to them and say, "What do you think?" And the longer my kid plays it without giving me my phone back or asking to have it on their own device, the better I know it's looking.
Well, I tell you what, one of the tools that I enjoy using and have used with clients before is Mockflow. Sorry, I almost lost the train of thought there. Mockflow. It's a good tool. It allows you to do. It has mobile stencils, as you say, Matthew, and works pretty well. So I think what you're talking about there, at least what everybody's kind of sharing on a high level, is that you at least have to have some sort of idea of where you're going, and know which pieces of the puzzle are going to be a part of it. So if you're going to need buttons, you need to know what they're, you need how many buttons, where they're going to be placed. If you're going to have a score, or you're going to have, enemies and heroes, you need to know how many of those you're going to have. So you at least have to define that someplace before you start. Is that generally what we're talking about, Brian?
Yeah, I think completely. That having a sketch or design or flow of how the game's going to be played or the app's going to work is just truly essential. Mockflow is great. I've used Blueprint as well, which is available for the iPad. There's all kinds of tools out there so that you can mock up what the app or the game's going to look like as you're going along. And what Ian was saying earlier, doing that prototype to make sure the concept that you want to propose is even going to work. Sometimes that is the first step that you've got to do to see if it's going to do. I've got several games in production that are still very much in prototyping to see if I can even accomplish what it is that I want to do inside the environment.
You're right. Yeah. I like Corona for that aspect of things, the prototyping, like Matthew was saying earlier, being able to quickly get to something, because sometimes you maybe can't wrap your mind around exactly how it's going to look, or something like that. And that's where kind of where something like a mock flow comes in, where you're not really writing any code. You're just dragging things onto the screen and putting them into a location, so that you can at least say, okay, well, I have a general idea of how many buttons I'm going to need, or how many players I'm going to need, or what what interface items I'm going to need, and then from there. What's that?
Here's a plug. It's why I would like to see Corona Levels come out in at least beta.
I agree too. There's been a lot of talk about that, and it really comes down to resources. But I agree. I think there's a need for it. I think that there's a use case for it, for sure. There's some great third-party tools out there, but it would be cool to have our own.
I think that one thing that I liked most about Levels, based on what I'm working on right now, was ironically not the building of the level so much as it was taking an image and then drawing around the image to get your custom physics property, and then saving that. I mean, even if that was all that thing did, to where I could take that code and go, okay, now I don't have to do this math to figure out, because not everything's a square, right? So that multi-dimensional looking thing there, and then say, okay, here's all my minus 18, plus 18, whatever it is, and then throw that into the actual code I'm working on. That, to me, was what I was most excited about. Drawing it and moving stuff around was great, but that was a big plus.
Maybe they should just rename it, right? Instead of a level editor, it's just
Physics Finder or something.
Yeah, right. So there's that, and then there's also tools like there's an iOS app called Interface, which if you're developing Android apps, you may not be excited about using an iOS app to develop that, but for the most part, it gives you a lot of the just generalized interface type stuff. Won't do a whole lot for you for games, I don't think, but if you were doing a business app or something like that, you could drag in things and the great thing about Mockflow, going back to that just briefly, is that you can actually hotspot items, so you can actually have buttons to click on and go from screen to screen to screen and see things in action. So I think that's, I don't know, for me, I'm a visual person, so I like to like Brian was saying, writing out all your specs is one thing, and I definitely think that's important, so that you know what it is you're going to do, and you can share that document out with other people. But I also like to kind of put things together visually and then have them where I can interact with them. And so tools that do that are great. So let's talk about, okay, so that's kind of just generally the beginning stage, but let's talk about, without getting into the weeds of tools, let's talk about some of the tools that people like. So going across the board here, what editors do you like to use and things like that? So Brian, kick us off and tell us what editor you like to use.
Right now I'm using Outlaw. I know Glider's out there and a lot of people like that, but I've been using Outlaw, before that Corona Project Manager, for a little over a year now, and the ability to be able to slide assets between projects just makes my day.
Yeah, that asset management seems like that's a huge strength of that tool.
Yeah.
Ed, what about you?
Pretty old school. I use Visual Studio because I work with a bunch of different languages. I just stick with one editor, Visual Studio, and that's it.
So you're
treat everything like a text file.
Interesting.
Well, excluding my graphics, of course.
Right. Okay. Interesting. That's I wouldn't have thought to do that, but that's yeah, it works. That's cool.
Well, I use different engines. Torque. I'm from the Torque camp a while back, and so I've got
editors.
I've got specific editors for different engines, and I finally just abandoned that because remembering all the keystrokes and whatnot was too hard. So it's nice to have the built-in debuggers with Cider, or is it called? What was it you were saying there, Brian?
Glider.
Glider. It's called Glider now, right? It's nice to have
Lua Glider.
that kind of thing. But I can get by with just a visual editor at this point, or a text editor.
Well, yeah,
especially
if you're doing. Are you doing any .NET development at all?
I am not actually, but I do some C++ work and things like that.
So you're just hanging in there with the Visual Studio thing.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I'm quite familiar with it at this point. It's all about speed for me.
Yes. Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that comes down to that. Really, everybody's going to have a different, and that's an important point. Everybody's going to have a different tool that they like to use, and each of them has.
That's why a lot of people like Eclipse.
Yeah.
Eclipse allows you to shift platforms very easily as well. So it's that Visual Studio. I used that for years, and Eclipse for years, and I guess I don't stick to it as long as Ed has. So maybe I should. I'd probably be a little more productive.
With that, and I don't have to buy more tools.
That's true.
Paid for.
There you go. There you go. And Gerald, what about you? What's your fave?
Well, I've been using TextMate for the longest time, and recently purchased Glider, and was going to use that. I've tried the Corona Project Manager. It was just way too buggy, so I gave up on that. But I started using Glider, and it seems like a good tool, but I keep finding myself going back to TextMate for stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. It seems like each IDE has its own personality, and you either jive with it or you don't. And so for the most part, yeah, a text editor just keeps popping back. Like I've been using Sublime a lot lately, and I like it mainly because I can zoom text with two keystrokes, and make things big, make things small, and in TextMate, for whatever reason, it says I'm supposed to be able to do that, but I can't do that. So it's something as simple as that keeps me from using TextMate.
I've had those issues too, but I still use it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
and I get stuck sometimes because Autocomplete isn't as up to date. With the bundle's not as up to date with later versions of Corona, and so sometimes it pulls in methods or properties for things that don't exist anymore, and or doesn't have all the properties for new items. So
okay, and Ian, I'm gonna assume you're do you use a tool for programming, or is that some other part of the team?
Yeah, well, I know Alan, who does most of the coding, has tried quite a few things, and at the moment I know he's checking out Zero Brain. I don't know if anyone's tried that. That looks like an interesting one. But yeah, I think he keeps going back to Sublime. And certainly when I'm looking at the code and doing anything, I end up defaulting to Sublime. It's just I actually came across it from some of my students at the university where I teach part-time who were using it and just running it off a USB stick because they didn't want to use whatever was installed on the machine. So it just kind of stuck from there.
So you said Zero Brain? Anybody?
Have I got the name wrong? Someone help?
Well, I don't know. I was going to say, has anybody else heard of that? I mean,
Never heard of that.
No? Huh. It sounds great. If you, check it out and see if you, if you think that's the right name. Let's see if we can.
It's right. I've just pasted a link in, so
Zero Brain.
check it out.
Okay, here we go. So check that out.
It's spelled differently than what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, interesting. I have to go check that out. And what do you think the strength of that tool is?
I don't know.
Oh, he uses it.
It's one of the things and we were just starting to look at it today. One of the front things is kind of debugging and live coding with Corona, which it seems to support. So we thought it was worth a look.
Okay. I don't remember it, so I'm not even going to try to say it, but there was a tool that I saw that in one of the Facebook groups somebody mentioned. Oh, I wish I remember the name of it, but it actually the YouTube video of it, and I'll put a link in the show notes if I can find it. But the YouTube video of it showed some pretty sweet looking autocomplete for Corona, and I thought, that would be a great feature. That's the one thing that I have but don't have in Sublime. I've got some add-ons and things, some bundles or whatever in Sublime, but I don't think that it does really what I want it to do. And so I think that would be one of the big hitters for me. If I could find an editor that really nailed the autocomplete, that would be great. But anyway, so we're talking really about workflow, so let's not get too far into the tools. But so the point there, I guess, the takeaway from that is that you need a basic editor of some sort. And from the varied answers that we have here, you can use just about anything, even if it's Visual Studio. So you just need something to work in, and it's all about efficiency. Again, coming back to how quickly can you get things done, and how well do you work with the tools. So that's the key point there. So let's talk about audio. Let's talk about audio and images. When do you guys think that you should start worrying about those things? Can you prototype an entire app without having them, or would you prefer to have them all developed right up front and before you start? Brian, kick us off.
I am of the camp that you need 2 people for each project. You got to have a graphics person, and you got to have a coder.
Okay.
And the graphics person should be working on the graphics. The coder should be working on the code at the same time. I hate the excuse that a lot of programmers sometimes use of, we can't do anything, we don't have any graphics. When you've got Corona or Unity or one of these tools like that, make a box and get going. It's not something, you don't have to have a finished sprite sheet to make this all work.
Right.
So I'm very firmly of the camp that they should be happening concurrently.
Okay, yeah. David Rowland, he went to the Global Game Jam there in Paris and created a whole app sitting there by himself. Used a graphics program on his iPad to draw the graphics with his finger and then bring those into his app. So I don't think that not having assets should be a problem for most people. Ed, what about you? You created a whole series of templates here recently for game development.
What do you think? What I'm doing wrong now, though. Brian tells me I'm supposed to have an artist on my team, and I'm just a programmer. So I'm the lone wolf.
I'm there with you. I'm always looking for good artwork.
Yes. Actually, on the topic of, let's back up. So your original question is when do we think art should come into the project?
Yeah.
I agree with Brian. I would say, I think maybe I agree with Brian in that there should be no excuse. So I'm not an artist. So I start off with primitives. And then as soon as I get to the point of my project where I think the artwork is going to actually influence the mechanics in any way, then I introduce art. Mm-hmm. Typically, I find that the artwork, excluding things like special effects, does not modify the mechanics too much. So I stay away from it as much as possible. and then add artwork about halfway through most of my projects.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because even if you create a sprite sheet, and not that you would create a sprite sheet full of primitives, I guess you could.
Right. Well, if you create sprite sheets, that's a good topic. So if you focus on the animations, especially if you're a non-artist like me, you're going to spend hours and hours working on the animations, only to find that they're wrong. Whereas if you'd spent your time on the mechanics of the movement, you'd have gotten a lot more done.
Yes.
So I try to avoid that kind of thing, and then if I need an artist, I'll go get one, or I'll rough through it on my own.
Okay. And any recommendations, since while we're here, any recommendations as to where you go get that artist?
I know a few artists. That's pretty much it. I don't have any sites that I go to. I know folks that I used to work with on other engines, which I won't mention. So I know a few artists, but I don't have a resource in particular.
Okay. Yeah, I know when we went to Global Game Jam, I was sure to collect cards from graphic artists who were there, who were working with teams, because that's a great place to connect with people who have talent in that area.
It's also a good place is the meetups.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
very good.
I run into a few instances where artists want to be programmers and programmers need artists, and it's better that the artist just continues doing art and supplies it to the programmer. And it works out pretty well.
Ian, what about you? You come from the art side, so how do we find guys like you?
I don't really. I started as a programmer making console games, FIFA and things like that. So I don't know. I've always been fairly good at art, so I just kind of took it upon myself to do it for Fingerhooler. But that's the first game I've done all of the art for.
Okay, so you're.
But I totally agree in terms of using primitives and just getting stuff working, and the art coming further down the line. I find you waste a lot less time like that for the most part, and some of the early builds of Fingerhooler looked pretty horrific. But all of the art Fingerhooler is actually done in Inkscape. I don't know if anyone's used Inkscape. It's kind of a free open source vector art package, and I love it now. There's a bit of a steep learning curve at first, and then it's just fantastic. Really fast and efficient.
Okay.
Ian, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So Inkscape is a vector art program versus a raster. That may not be the right term. Anyway, the other non-vector. So did you choose Inkscape because of the rescalability, or just?
Yeah, we yes. I mean we did it first on an old game called Super Yum Yum, and we're making it for very old handsets where the graphics were very, very low resolution, and also for PC, and actually had an Xbox version running at one time, and we wanted to be able to scale the graphics between kind of very low res and very high res without losing anything. So I've kind of been a big fan of them since then, and certainly even on the last game, I got sent screenshots of the game running on a Nexus 10, which is ridiculous resolution, and everything looked, crystal clear and super sharp. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I was just asking because I always have trouble with either upscaling or downscaling. Run into pixelization, other issues like that.
Yeah, none of that.
Artist, I'm sure you got that all ironed out now.
Well, you would probably be surprised with what effects you can get with vectors in terms of blurs and textures and other things that you just wouldn't have thought you would be able to do in vectors.
Brian, is that a self-portrait up there on the screen? What do you got?
Yes, this is the high end of my artwork.
I like it. Well,
And I used this inside of the spine software that we were talking about a week or two ago, and created an animation using this primitive that I drew in Photoshop in just a couple of minutes. Actually, it took me hours and hours to get this right, but then I was able to import it into Spine and animate it, and have him walking across the screen in a fairly short period of time. So
Oh, very cool. No, that's okay. That's okay. I understand. Simple is good. Simple is good. So, Jared, what about you? What's your secret?
I can't tell you, then it wouldn't be a secret. Oh man! So I've got a couple things. I mean, I'm a lot like Brian, but in some ways, but we typically leave most of the artwork, like all the heavy art stuff, to the end because, like Ed, I find things change as the project moves along. Um, so we'll do final artwork there. We'll put placeholders and things like that. There's no reason to not get started because you don't have graphics. That's stupid. I mean, anybody can draw a circle, save it, or grab a clip art off the internet, throw it in there because you're just testing it. It's not going to be part of the final product.
Yeah.
And as far as, so we do that a lot. And as far as artists, finding them, I have artists apply all the time on my site. It's one of the job listings on my site. Meetups, yes, great place to find artists. The other thing that I've found is just working with like GDC and IGDA. Those groups are a great place to find artists. You go to these events and you meet people, you network. You don't just talk to the people that you already know because you could do that without having to go to an event. And so that's how you're going to find these people. And I've found a lot of good artists that way. And if anybody needs an artist, I've got a guy I've used for a couple of little things. I'm not. It was more UI kind of stuff. It wasn't super fantastic artwork, but that he was doing for games. But he may have those abilities. So if you need somebody, let me know because he's actively seeking work and he's really cheap. That having been said, for my top selling app, Air Assault, the one that's had millions of downloads, in order to find an artist for that, I had a really hard time because it was very old school pixel art. And those guys, the pixel pushers, are really hard to find. And I'm trying to find one. So if anybody, because my other guy was in Spain, actually, and that's the only place I could find a guy that had the skills. And his hard drive got stolen, and I'm looking to make everything more HD ready, so to speak, Retina ready. So I'm looking to redo a bunch of that artwork and actually looking to redo that game in Corona. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So if anybody's out there is a quote unquote pixel pusher, give Gerald a ring. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah,
on
go
that note, I actually came across a website today called develteam.com, and it's actually kind of a community site, but a place where developers can post up that they're looking for artists or programmers, or they already have a team and they can show off the work, and it's quite a good. I think it's quite a good resource.
Okay. Excellent.
And something I'll throw out there, it's kind of been top secret, but it's part of one of the companies that I'm acquiring. Take a look at iPhoneDeveloper.com. I had a website called iPhoneDevelopersNetwork.com, which was a social network for iPhone developers to be able to find artists and artists to find work, as well as marketing and all kinds of other resources. We're going to be combining all of that under the iPhoneDeveloper.com site. You might go check that out. And I'm also looking for people to write, articles and stuff on that site as well. It's all geared towards, the community. And as we move forward with that, then we'll look at moving out towards Android as well, and possibly other platforms.
So now iPhoneDeveloper.com right now is it's been sold, right? So it's not actually there as an active site.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it's iPhone developers.
Oh, somebody bought the singular. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that would actually, I've got them both. But yeah, iPhoneDevelopers.com is the plural is the active site right now.
Oh, okay, got it. So you're gonna redirect the singular right there right now, then, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna combine it all into one site, so everything will be redirected. But it's a neat little site, and like I said, I'll be looking at people to write articles on, especially for Corona-based type stuff, because right now everything's kind of iOS, Xcode, SDK kind of stuff right now.
Sounds like a great domain name. So no issues there with Apple breathing down your neck?
Not yet. Oh, maybe they'll acquire me.
Well, I think the one takeaway there that everybody should take away, and that's what we didn't really cover, is the fact that you can also do all those things in parallel. So while you don't necessarily need those graphics or even the audio to get started, you can have someone else working on those while you're working on the code. So I think Brian touched on this idea that having more than one person work on the project just inherently means that one person can be doing programming, one person can be doing the graphic end of things, or the design, creative end of things. I know the guys at was for Go Ninja and Shackdown. You know, those guys. There's just two of them. Well, I think there's three now, but one is the creative design element end of things, and the other is the developer. So they work real well together, and they're able to crank things out pretty quickly because they're both doing separate parts of the project. Okay, so we didn't talk much about audio, but the same thing applies, I assume. Anybody got any good resources for audio? Places that I mean, Ian, I think you created all your audio, didn't you?
We have an audio guy who I've known for a little while, and we've been wanting to do a project together. So the game was a good opportunity. But he's kind of very experienced old school audio guy, and he's done music for Thief and some of the Lego games, Lego Harry Potter, I think, and some others. So yeah, he kind of did it in his free time, but he knows a lot. There's a tool he really likes called Ocean Audio. Don't know if anyone's heard of that.
Like Ocean?
Almost. Ocean without the A.
Okay.
OCEN. Audio, and that's a free cross-platform audio editor that he rates really highly.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So, there was one that was, I was on the plane the other day, and somebody was showing me one. It was an iOS app, and oh man, I wish I could remember the name of it. But basically, he was showing me that you could create all your different audio and all these different iOS apps, and then this one app pulled everything together from all these different apps. So, because in iOS it puts everything into these little silos or whatever. Well, this this app, no, I'm hoping I talk long enough. One of you knows what I'm talking about. But it would pull everything together, and so you could say
Jot.
Is it? No.
Is it Jot?
No, it was like two words. I can't remember it. Sounds like, starts with, I don't know. If I can find it, I'll post a link to it. But the same.
Yeah, I've been using Jot Agent for that. But
is that okay? Does it work similar to that?
Similar, yeah, but it may not be what you're. Okay. I'm sure there's other tools out there like that.
Okay. Yeah. The whole idea there is just that there's a lot of tools out there that are available that you can do a lot of things yourself. If you need someone who is really sound proficient, it's best to seek that person out. But there, if you want to stub something in, you can either do that, or you can go to like Pond5, pond5.com. They've got a lot of great clips.
GarageBand or Acid Studio, or there's plenty of tools out there to do that. But getting professional help, let's face it, most programmers do need professional help.
You're right.
It's an important thing, just like you need a good graphics person, you need a good sound person.
Yeah. So there you go. So then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to post. Oh, what is that? Somebody have something to say?
I've used iStock. You know how they have iStock Photo for art?
Yeah.
They also have a lot of those sites, including iStock Photo, has sounds, and I've used them in the past for things, as well as a few other sites to pull in sounds for games, so they're royalty free that way.
Yeah, they have video clips as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so you can pull those.
And there's also 3D. There's 3D animated images as well that you can work with. You can buy models to work with, and I've done that for things.
Okay, that's a great resource. Yeah, I always forget about them for audio, just because they're they build themselves for so long as an image repository. But yeah, that's a good tip as well. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna post a link in the show notes to a YouTube video that was put together by Jesse Warden. He put it out a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago, I think maybe now, and it's a pretty good workflow video. He spends about an hour or so talking about workflow. And now he gets more into the weeds of things. He actually talks about the very specific aspects of certain tools and how they work together, and how he kind of snaps things together, and he kind of shows his workflow. So I'll put a link in the show notes for that. It's a really good video. I think you should take the time to go watch it. At least get a sense for how he defines workflow, the way he does it. And like I said, when we first started, I mean, workflow is going to be something different to everybody for the most part. All right. Well, I think we're coming up on the 3 o'clock hour. We're almost done. The last thing we need to do here is we basically need to announce our T-shirt winner. So this week's T-shirt winner is Ken Cardita. And Ken basically heard about Corona Geek on Twitter. He followed us on Google+, and then he went over and he filled out the giveaway entry form, which you can do by going to coronageek.com/giveaway, and basically tell us how you heard about Corona Geek, tell us how you follow us, and fill out a few other little details there just for general interest. And if we select you from the hat, then we will send you a Corona t-shirt. So I'll be emailing him today, finding out what size t-shirt he's going to wear, and we'll get that out to him in the mail this week. So it's really that simple. All right, before we kick off, anybody else got anything they want to say or add or do before we go? No? Going once?
Brian? Good.
Brian?
Going once, yes. I got a new template coming out this week. Finishing it up today, so anybody who's listening who follows my templates, please check that out later this afternoon.
Okay, and give us the URL for that.
Yeah, it's actually, I'll send it to you and we can attach it to the YouTube video if that's all right. It's kind of long.
Okay, you can do that definitely.
It's roaminggamer.com/makegames.
Okay, yeah, send that to me and we'll definitely attach it. Okay, so Ian, got anything?
Well, I posted a new. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Ian. Go ahead.
We entered a game hack in the UK last weekend, and we made a little game in Corona in 24 hours, and we won Best Mobile Game. So I will share a link with that for that, and everyone can check it out if they're interested.
Okay, very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Brian, what do you said what?
Yeah, I just simply I posted last night a new tutorial on YouTube on using the the touch joint in Physics Engine. So if anybody wants a quick tutorial on that, the basics are there on how to do a simple touch joint.
Okay, great. Yeah, send me a link to that, and I'll definitely add it. And Matthew?
I'm just going to go finish up putting everything on the Android store.
Okay.
I don't have any tutorials to post, sorry. I will work on one of those if that would be beneficial. I am going over, like you and I discussed earlier, I'm going over to the Texaco on Friday to do some ambassadorship.
Okay. Yeah, very cool. Thank you for that. Thank you for being an ambassador.
Giving them an assignment. Maybe I can get an artist out of there somewhere.
There you go. That's a good resource. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Being involved in your local community and the schools and stuff like that, so you can find that up and coming talent. So that's a great resource as well. All right, well, guys, thanks.
Can't find talent, train it.
That's right. You find it wherever you can. Secure it. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for hanging out with us for this Corona Geek. We're here every week, Mondays, 2 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. GMT. We're here, and you can follow us on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. We're there. So until next week, have fun and happy coding.